It is called the European Political Community. It is the brainchild of French President Emmanuel Macron, but it met for the first time on the 6th of October in Prague under the Czech EU presidency. It is not a new organization. It is a new format for discussion. It comprises the 27 countries of the European Union and 17 countries from the European continent, which are very different in size, in economy, and in political ambition. Let's see these countries. As you can see from the north, there are the countries of the European Economic Area, Norway and Iceland. There is a former member of the European Union, the United Kingdom, and a country that by no means wishes to become a member, Switzerland. There are the countries of the Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. There are countries which are already in the Eastern Partnership, like Moldova and Ukraine. And finally, what it interests for our debate, there is Turkey and the 6 countries of the Western Balkans. They made one thing clear: they do not want this to become a substitute to accession. But the EPC is not the only important thing that took place in the last few weeks, and that relates to the European path of the Western Balkans. There were elections in Bosnia and Herzegovina, interesting results and controversial decisions by the High Representative, Bosnia and Herzegovina, who finally got a proposal from the European Commission for receiving candidate status. There were discussions about ending the visibility of new instability. So, hello and welcome to this seminar, Democracy in the Western Balkans. This is the 6th one in a series organized this year by the group of the European Socialists and Democrats and in the European Parliament as part of the Global Progressive Forum. My name is Thomas Miglierina. I am not part of the GPF. I am a journalist with the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation and with the Italian website Osservatorio Balcani. I was invited to moderate the next 60 minutes of discussions from the GPF, and I thank you for this opportunity. With me, first of all, Andreas Schiede. You are actually the host and the president of the GPF. An important moment to talk about the Balkans. And do you like the European political community, by the way?
First, maybe just to say hello and good afternoon. And for those which do not know until now, the Global Progressive Forum is something like a platform for discussion of progressive thinkers, means politicians from the S&D group and the Party of European Socialists, but also trade unionists, civil society, journalists, people from university. And it is not linked only to the European Union, neither to Europe, but should be also focused on global issues. But I think the Western Balkans are definitely part of highest interest, and therefore I think it's a very good topic today. And to answer your question on the European political community, I think the good thing on it was it brought the pro-democratic forces in the question of the Russian war against Ukraine on one table, including also the United Kingdom, the European Union, and most of the Western Balkan states and others. I think this was an important signal to show. And then the but is, I think, the most important.
The jury is still out about whether it is going to work or not.
It is not an alternative to make politics and to work on the enlargement, to make the reforms inside the Union and inside the Balkans, and to open our doors quickly for the Western Balkan states, especially for those which undertook huge reforms.
With us from Hamburg, Marion Kraske. Marion, you are a German political scientist and publicist, and you were director of the Heinrich Böll Foundation from 2015 to 2021. The Heinrich Böll Foundation, it's a think tank for green visions and projects, which is closely associated with the Green Party in Germany. And you're now back into journalism, as you were for many years, namely for the Spiegel in the Western Balkans. Hello to you, and to you the same question. Do you like this European political community? Do you think it's meaningful for the Western Balkans?
Yeah, thank you. At the first place, hello, and thank you for having me here today about these important topics. At the end, we're talking about a new format, and it's always good to have a new platform, right, to exchange, for trust building, for a political dialogue. In this sense, I suppose that the new approach could be beneficial for all sides. On the other hand, I think it's highly desirable that this platform will be more than just a symbolic meeting platform, like a cover-up, just to say to the Balkan region, you know, we have something and we can discuss. I think what is urgently needed, I'm trying to be a little bit the advocate of the region where I lived for 6 years till 2021, that the European Union has to deliver something. And I think it's great to have this platform, but at the end we will see what will come out of it. What the region definitely needs are substantial steps forward.
Thank you. Marion, with us in the studio, Nikola Dimitrov, Macedonian politician and a diplomat. You were foreign minister of North Macedonia between 2017 and 2020, and we all remember 17 of June 2018, the historical Prespa agreement. You were in office when it was signed. You signed it. And it's an agreement, for those of you who don't know, that normalized relations with Greece and has removed a major obstacle on the way towards EU accession. Do you like the European political community? Do you think it's meaningful for countries like yours?
First of all, I'd like to thank Andreas and Thijs and the whole S&D group in the European Parliament for this opportunity to speak here today. On the European political community, I'll respond with 2 or 3 questions. Is it wise to consolidate at times where we have war in Europe? We live in this geopolitical moment. Probably yes. I think it is important to signal unity, that we are together in this, that there is solidarity, and that we stand by Ukraine, by the victim. And we sanction and condemn the aggressor, Putin's Russia. Now, is there some danger that the attention of the leaders, and they're busy, and we unfortunately face many problems on the continent, will this take away from the attention to the accession process? I think there is a measure of that risk. And I don't think it is enough to say that the European political community will not replace enlargement. I think we have to fix enlargement and show to the people that it is delivering. And if we do it, I don't think there will be fears in the region that I come from, the Western Balkans, that this has been created as another waiting room, so to speak. So I think it is important. We should probably add content and discuss policies that matter for the 27 and the 17 that are outside of the EU, for the 44 countries involved. But in parallel, we need to work and fix the accession process. That is fading away. The promise seems too shaky and too distant. One doesn't replace the other. And to conclude the presentation of the panel, last but not least, Thijs Ruiten from the Netherlands, MEP from the Dutch PvdA, sits in the Foreign Affairs Committee and in particular in the delegations of North Macedonia. But by now you know the questions. Do you like the European political community and do you think it's meaningful for the Western Balkans?
I share the skepticism also shared before, but I do think it was an important moment to have all countries but Russia and Belarus, for obvious reasons, around the table. But I fully agree that this can never be a replacement for membership, nor can it be some kind of second-rank membership or some kind of platform that we keep countries that aspire to become part of the family, that we keep them happy with. That cannot be the objective of the European political community. Now, what is then the objective of the European political community? To me, if it should become a meaningful platform, it should also be more than just another talking platform. So it's up to the leaders also to make up their minds what they want to make of it. But my focus will be and will remain at the enlargement of the European Union and creating an as big as possible zone of democracy and freedom.
Thank you. I was in Prague at the first meeting of the European political community. The Western Balkans were not the main topic of discussions, but as I said, the Western Balkans are never meager in terms of news and events. I mentioned before the elections in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and it's from there that I would like to start with Marion Kraske. Marion, you are not in Bosnia now, but you are there regularly. How do you read this result? Is it a sign of increased democratic maturity? Is it a sign of what?
As always with Bosnia, it's quite complicated. First of all, I see some really positive developments. For example, Denis Bećirović will be the first socialist in the Bosnian presidency. I think this is a huge success for the democratization path. It's a great opportunity. He won against the SDA, the Bosniak radical candidate, the leader Bakir Izetbegović. And together, I think, with Jelko Komšić, the Croat member in the presidency, we have then two actors that are openly working on a European, on a democratic future of an anti-nationalist future of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I think really this is a huge step forwards into the right direction. And it's a window of opportunity that should be also used by the European Union and also by the international community as such. On the other hand, we have unfortunately on the Serb side, we have Željana Cvijanović. She is the right hand of the radical Serb leader Milorad Dodik. She will be also part of the presidency, and she's openly supporting the idea of secession. So that means that the troubleshooting will be a continuity in the presidency itself. And additionally to that, we have also a strong support in the parliaments of the national forces like the Radical Bosniak Party, SDA, the Radical Croat Party, HDZ, and the Serb Radical Party, SNSD, with really strong results. And so this is the dark side of the medal. And all in all, I think these are really, signs of a change somehow, of some hope also. And it reflects also the decision of the voters, right? That some of them really want to see change and want to see a brighter and a more democratic future than, for example, the national forces are offering it for the country.
But can they really change? Can they really make the difference? And I ask you this because we see the role played by other countries in the region, and we also see the decisions such as the one of the High Representative to basically change the electoral law once the polls were closed. That was met with, to say the least, controversial reactions. Marion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in fact, we witnessed a historic interference by the High Representative Christian Schmidt, a German conservative politician. And I think this is really a unique case of failure of an international envoy. The timing was questionable, right? But also content-wise, it is perceived as an intervention that was extremely undemocratic, also by many law experts. And important also to mention that he had the backing, the explicitly backing of the US, Great Britain, and Croatia for good reasons. And as a matter of fact, the intervention provoked a great deal of criticism also in the country itself. Yesterday, there were also protests in front of the OHR building. And people were demanding his withdrawal and his resignation. So
let me try to play the devil's advocate here, because we don't have anybody from the OHR. I mean, there is also an element of realpolitik. There is an element of balance in the region. Do you think? I mean, can you at least understand some of the reasons why this decision was taken?
I mean, to be honest, not at all, because we have 5 verdicts of the European Court for Human Rights, right, about the discrimination of Jews and of Roma people. And I think this is really very pretty much the time to implement these verdicts. And Christian Schmidt did the total opposite. He was delivering something to the Bosnian Croats. So the main beneficiary of that is one minority group called the Constituent Group of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And this is quite questionable. Also, legal experts are complaining about his intervention in that sense that it's not clear if this is really in line with the Bosnian constitution. So I think somehow this is a severe crisis, not only through this intervention. He was damaging his reputation, and he is also damaging somehow the reputation and the position of the OHR itself. I think this is a severe crisis of credibility of the international engagement in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this is the outcome of this questionable intervention.
In light of what has happened on the field, what do you think of the decision of the Commission to finally propose candidate status for Bosnia and Herzegovina, something that will be decided in December?
I mean, the candidate status, yes. I mean, for sure, it's a crucial moment for Bosnia and Herzegovina to get the candidate status. But again, it needs more. It needs a strong commitment right now to work substantially on a democratization process, and not only, you know, on reforms. Mr. Schmidt also called his intervention a reform, but on the contrary, we're going backwards with this form of intervention, because it's just supporting and cementing the power structures of the ethno-nationalist forces. What we really would need is a commitment and a strong strategy also to strengthen democratic forces. In fact, Mr. Schmidt did the opposite by weakening the democratic forces and by cementing the old power structures. And this is not acceptable. So we will see if this will be also come to the Constitutional Court. Law experts are criticizing this, also some European parliamentarians, especially also from the Netherlands, from Germany, and we will see, because there is the demand of the withdrawal of his decision, and this is a really interesting discussion.
We'll see what happens. I wanted to start with Bosnia to get to Macedonia, because Bosnia might get the candidate status by the end of the year. Macedonia got it in 2005, and then for many years nothing happened until you reached that historical agreement that I mentioned before, and then nothing happened again. And now you finally had an accession conference that looked very much like an attempt to show that we were meeting deadlines. I don't know if you know when the next accession conference is going to happen, but I mean, how do you look at all this with the Macedonian experience, Nikola Dimitrov?
It's I think I have to be honest on this one, even risking to sound a bit bitter, but I only express the sentiment of the citizens, of the Macedonian citizens. It's really difficult to believe in the European promise. And, you know, a baby born when we got the candidate status is coming out of age soon, turning 18, and I'm not sure that formally we're closer to joining than back in 2005. And I will be perfectly fine if it was about corruption that we would have been blocked or vetoed, or about the freedom of the media in the country. But it was not. It was on issues that were not very much related to what this process must be about, which is Europeanization, making our country a proper, functional European democracy governed by the rule of law, respecting human rights, minority rights, etc. So I think enlargement is in a crisis, and I think it is high time to recognize this reality. I don't think problems can be solved by ignoring them. And if we simply copy-paste the template from the Western Balkans on Ukraine now and Moldova, we will create only more frustrations and disappointment. In the recent European Commission report, by overall preparedness, North Macedonia is doing quite well, slightly behind Montenegro. Montenegro has been in the accession talks for 123 months. We are actually ahead of Serbia by the Commission assessment, and Serbia has been in the process for 8 years. We are doing something wrong here if these are the results that we can show. I also think that we have obviously an issue with individual vetoes by member states.
In your case, the name of the veto used to be Greece, and now it's Bulgaria.
Yes.
And I don't know if there's any movement
with France in between.
with France in between.
Before the new methodology. And is it European and even decent in 21st century Europe to impose identity issues and historical narratives upon your neighbor using your leverage as a member state? You know, European Union is a community of values. This is our strength as Europeans. It is not a fraternity club. And if you can impose an agenda that is fundamentally anti-European and revisionist, denying your neighbors that they have a language. We have a crisis of narrative, and we also have a moral crisis. So, in some ways, this issue with Bulgaria works against Macedonian-Bulgarian friendship, and it defocuses both countries from the real problems they face, which is fighting corruption and rule of law, and the brain drain, and the fact that young people see their future and their pursuit of happiness abroad and not at home. So instead of focusing on the present-day problems and the living generation, there is too much of going back to the old glory days and searching for pride, digging deep in the history of the nations and the region.
It's paradoxical because it is a project of peace and reconciliation, so it should actually bring to exactly the opposite, no?
So I think we have a lot to do in our region. We are also seeing that problems do not stop once you join. We also have rule of law issues in member states. So I think we have to be honest. I think we have to rethink how the process works. I think we have to ask some member states, is membership still on offer? Is it on the table? Because we hear often that before new members, for the functionality of the decision-making of the Union on the inside, things must change first. You know, I think we have to identify these issues, be honest, create more timely incentives, because now we have a process that struggles to reward reformers, but also struggles to sanction backsliding. So we advertise enlargement as a merit-based process, but there is very little merit in what we see on the ground.
Thanks, Reiten. Let me jump straight into you, because you come from the Netherlands. The Netherlands is not France, Nicola Dimitrov mentioned before, but it's certainly not at the forefront of the pro-enlargement countries. So we heard from Nicola Dimitrov, we heard from Marion Kraske how important it is to give signals to the Western Balkans. Is this being perceived in the Netherlands?
Well, yes, you are completely right. And the last years, especially when it comes to, for example, a very small issue like visa liberalization for Kosovo, are not exactly years that I'm proud of when it comes to the Dutch approach to enlargement. However, something is changing. The Prime Minister visited earlier this year Albania and North Macedonia, and he was very positive actually about the progress made. And I also think that the current developments in Europe with the war in Ukraine are also awakening certain positive emotions, even in the Netherlands. I'm trying to work on that. There are more people working on that in the Netherlands, because we have a long way to go in the Netherlands. Because for decades, I would say, the discussion has been moved ahead, comfortably moved aside even from the political arena. And I think it has to be in the center of the political arena, because we cannot afford, we do not have the geopolitical luxury anymore to stall the process even further. And we have to make clear to the Dutch citizens, but also to other member states' citizens, that it's plainly in our interest to take this process seriously. And we cannot create miracles, but we can be honest and we can deliver once things were promised and not change the rules during the games. These are important principles, and we have to re-explain, I think, again, in the whole of Europe, why did we ever started this project? We started this more than 70 years ago because we wanted to create a continent of freedom and democracy, a stable continent, a continent without war. We have to remind people again that that is exactly what is at stake. And therefore, I'm trying to be optimistic, but there's a lot of work to do, like Nicola said.
What are the main concerns? For example, I know that in the Netherlands, people take rule of law, corruption, all these issues very seriously, and they want to see real movement.
Well, on that aspect, I'm actually proud that the Netherlands is at the forefront of fighting the rule of law, backsliding within the European Union, and also sets it as an example that that is exactly what we do not want when future enlargement is happening. But for me, it's crucial that we make clear that we cannot blame the countries that aspire to become part of the family for the mistakes that we have made with current member states by not acting, by not repairing quickly the rule of law backsliding in countries like Poland and Hungary. We cannot blame the enlargement countries for it. But there is a challenge, of course. We need to work on reparations inside the European Union. We have to make sure that future accessions will never run the risk anymore of backsliding on fundamental issues like the rule of law and fundamental rights.
Andreas Schieder, before coming to you, I would like to show to you and to our audience some slides. This is from a BPAG public opinion poll on how the EU integration is perceived in the Western Balkans. It was published in November 2021. BPAG, it's the Consortium of European Fund for the Balkans, Center for Southeastern European Studies, and University of Graz. So this is the first slide. Are you in favor of joining the EU? And you can see the first one is Albania, 94% is in favor. Then it's Bosnia-Herzegovina. Second is Kosovo, sorry. Macedonia has a 20% chunk of people that answer no, and Serbia has 47. Let's move to the second slide, the reasons. And we cannot see it very much from the monitors. The people that are following us will see it better. But the most important reason is the free movement of people. It's the top left one. And of all the 6 countries that were polled, the highest one hoping in the free movement of people is Kosovo, which is actually the only country that doesn't even have visa-free travel. And the last slide, please. This is when do you think that the accession to the European Union will happen? Well, the 2 most optimistic are Kosovo and Montenegro. They say within 5 years. Among the more pessimists, you can see Serbia. Serbia is the dark blue line, bottom right. In Serbia, the majority of the people say never. It will never happen. So, Andreas Schieder, bearing in mind all that happened, bearing in mind these results, is the EU doing the right things?
I think when we ask ourselves why Serbia is always, let's say, at the end of our statistics, less pro-European and less reformed, then we can simply say Vučić did a perfect job, because it is the result of the politics of Vučić also to make a split between European orientation of the Serbian people and his country. And I still remember, I think it was 2008, when the Democratic Party was in government. I still remember because it was also European football championships in Austria, and we played against and lost against Serbia. But there was a completely different mood among Serbian people. And I think the lesson which we have to take out of these statistics is that we should not risk that other people in the Balkan region also become, let's say, more European skeptics, where I think we give them also quite enough reasons to become skeptics, because there are promises not fulfilled. And if we look at the overall picture, North Macedonia and Albania are the 2 which undertook the biggest reforms on rule of law, on vetting process for the jurisdictional system and so on. And they are the ones which are, let's say, mostly have to wait the longest, being the last in the queue to join the European Union. And I think because we started with Bosnia, and the big problem of Bosnia is that ethnics play a major role in the politics, and not the everyday problems of the people, like good education, good housing, having a job, having a future. But it's about ethnics. And what is secondly the problem of Bosnia is that neighboring countries and politicians of neighboring countries interfere negatively into Bosnian politics, while also Bosnian politicians are already create enough problems themselves, so also the neighbors interfere. And therefore, I think we have to be careful, because we should not allow again and again that neighboring countries bring in ethnic and identity issue beside solving the real existing problem. Because you asked before the question, is it weird? It is not about past. The European integration is the model to overcome all the differences, if they have existed or if they not have existed, for a common future. And I think this is a sentence which should be in the first page also of Bulgarian political science, and all the other neighboring countries.
But it's difficult to excite spirits with this kind of reasoning. It's easier to excite spirits by appealing to ancient mythologies and history.
Yeah,
not only in Western Balkans, by the way. Yeah?
But maybe we are too scared, and maybe we like these little games. Because you mentioned Nikola Dimitrov being the politician who negotiated a Prespa agreement, who signed the Prespa agreement, which was a dramatic, huge step for the country. And I think when we speak about Ukraine, we all know it is about our values. We have to come closer together. Why not offering a big deal to the Balkan countries and say, listen, we want to make you 10 major reforms in the next 4 years, and we promise you, you will be in. And then also to ask the countries, okay, you have to do hard reforms, you have to do quick the reforms, not to forget domestic politics, do the reforms, come closer, but we promise you the doors are open.
Could this work, Nikola Dimitrov?
It could. Essentially, it's about injecting political fuel in the process. And I don't think we are inherently less capable of doing what must be done. You know, when people go to Italy or Germany or the Netherlands, they're perfectly capable of integrating and making themselves valuable members of those societies. So it's a matter of political will in the region, and it's a matter of political will in the EU capitals.
And you can do
Nothing is impossible.
And you can do it regardless of the European Union. I mean, normally people take medicines in order to feel well, not because the doctor orders you to.
I agree. Look, eventually, we are the ones that will fix our countries.
Exactly.
Sometimes we over-glorify the EU, you know, as if it's the magic wand that overnight will help all the problems and we're going to wake up in a different reality. No, we are the ones that will do the work. The accession process helps. It's a reform tool. It's very important, but it's not sufficient. You have to have the political will. So I agree the responsibility is shared. I also argue that it will help to include the region in the reporting mechanisms that apply for the member states, like the Justice Scoreboard, like the European semester. Because you're a journalist, you said. The most recent index of media freedom by Reporters Beyond Borders, several of the candidate countries are doing better than some of the EU member states. So blaming the region is easy if you say, but they're not doing enough, they're not ready. Well, I'm sorry, but on media freedom, some candidate countries are actually better than member states. So.
Yes. But that is actually the problem. I mean, one of the reasons why enlargement, I mean, you were a victim of the fact that some country entered into the European Union and then went on to a reverse path, which is why some other countries say that we have to be careful with the whole enlargement business. But let me go back to Marion Kraske. Marion, are you still with us? You're following our conversation, I hope. It's too bad that you are not here in person with us, but nevertheless, any comments on what you heard on the proposals of Mr. Schieder and on the other things you heard so far?
Yeah, I would like to add something also that was mentioned before, right? This is about the interferences of the neighboring country. I completely agree. And we have really to make clear that the interferences by Zagreb and also by Belgrade are really quite alarming, and that also the intervention by Mr. Schmidt stands obviously in connection with the lobby work of the Zagreb, of the Croatian government. Mr. Plenković openly said in the parliament that this is a result, the interferences in the electoral system in Bosnia and Herzegovina by High Representative Schmidt was a result of the lobby work of the Croatian government, not only with Mr. Schmidt, but also, for example, in the US. And I think this really has to be stopped. It's unacceptable. And I think we should really avoid to go back to the situation of the 90s. I would like just to remember of the meeting by Milosevic and Tudjman in Karađorđevo 1991, because they took the decision to divide Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then the war started with all the crimes that were really, sued in the Hague. So these agendas are still very vivid, and I think this is an alarming process. The former Slovenian president recently, also 2 days ago, he warned that we have these interferences and that this is blocking the European and democratization path of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this has to be openly discussed also in Brussels, that a member state like Croatia is creating problems and is trying to interfere in the political system.
Yeah. And the picture will not be complete without mentioning on the day of the elections the greetings and the encouragement of Mr. Orban to Mr. Dodik. I don't know if you saw that message. He was almost moving in the way he was supporting openly Dodik and calling him a great friend of the Hungarian people.
And it's great that, just 1 second, because this is really important. Mr. Orban, for example, openly supports Mr. Dodik and the secession part, and we see this axis Zagreb, Belgrade, with the backing of the Kremlin. And this is what is, I think, really not so much discussed in Brussels. I think this really is a huge concern for the Bosnian state at the moment.
Yeah, we'll get to that, with the big difference that the Kremlin is not in the European Union, while Hungary and Croatia are. So your comments on the fact that it's one thing, it's the European Union and Brussels, and the other is the member states.
We have the example of Bulgaria doing what it's doing to North Macedonia. We have the example of Orban, and from Budapest also the commissioner responsible, Varhelyi, gets some directions. And so we have a lot of people working against the process instead of helping the process ahead. And I'm maybe even more angry with the other 26 or 25 member states than with the member states doing this, because it was these 26 member states back in June that refused to put enough pressure on Bulgaria to prevent this, in my view, appalling deal that has been closed, because I really have to do my best to see something positive in it, because to me it was not positive at all. And I'm probably more angry with the other 26 than with Bulgaria itself. Because the other 26 refused their responsibility, taking their responsibility for the process. And that is the big difference, I think, with the process and the series of enlargements that started with the fall of the Berlin Wall. Back then, back in the previous century, but also at the beginning of this century, there was a genuine belief, we're gonna make it. We want you in it, we want you in the family, and we're gonna make it whatever the problems that we are going to face. And I think that now the time has come, due to geopolitical developments, to again have such a moment where we say, look, we're going to make it, and we're going to do it within this decade maybe. And like also Andreas said, and Nicola, show the genuine belief and conviction that we can do it as a family of European states.
Yeah. Nicola Dimitrov, you must, because you're totally smart in the Balkans, so you immediately feel the difference between certain capitals and what Brussels says. And what do you make of it? How do you react when you see this kind of cacophony?
You know, I mean, it is nice to say you have European perspective. It is nice to hear one day you will be part of the European family. But after some time and years and even decades, next year we will make 2 decades since the promise of Thessaloniki to the region, 2003. What do we have to show for success? Croatia 2013.
That's it.
It's not enough. And we are talking about a region of small countries surrounded by member
By
states.
European Union, yeah.
We are one room in the European house, and we are not part of the electricity, of the, the water supply, the heating, and Europe is interested when they need us. The migration crisis, 2015 and 16, all of a sudden we became very important. We are in the same boat. And fixing this room is good for the whole house,
exactly.
And it's good for the people living in the room. And I think what we are lacking is some courage to come up with a coherent vision, not only about the region. We are in war. This was unthinkable. We live in uncertain times. There is strategic competition between our friends in the US and China. Many regional players are fighting for their own influence. Mexico and Brazil and India and Turkey. What are we going to do globally if we don't get our act together as Europeans? Are we going to settle for several different Europes, where we're going to have proper democracies, let's say the core Europeans, then we have a second circle where we're going to tolerate corruption, maybe a bit, to some extent?
Hopefully not.
And do we put the region in the second circle, or do we have a long-term vision that we're going to fix this, that we're going to have a whole continent, and we're going to fight corruption in every corner of the continent? It will take time, yes. Is it possible? It is if we want it. So I think the big narrative is, are we going to settle for a second Yalta, or are we going to go for a second Helsinki and fight in Ukraine, in member states? We have seen that there are problems on the inside as well, and take this seriously. Otherwise, the European voice will matter less and less in the world that is coming.
How about a pragmatic approach? Let's say we find solution, for example, for the issue of the brain drain. We include the Western Balkans into academic exchange. We solve migration issues, knowing that the political integration is going to be perhaps the last thing that's going to come. Could this fly?
It will help, because now, with some exceptions, to be fair, but the approach is more binary. When you're in, you're fully in. When you're out, you're mostly out. So if we have a more gradual approach, sit around the table. I am here in the European Parliament. We don't have members in the European Parliament. It feels good to be in the European Parliament. You know, it helps. These people will get to know me. So socialization. Increased access to funds so that you reward those who do reforms and do perform, you know. So this more gradual sectoral integration, there is something that is going, like for instance, the energy crisis now, it's a pressing issue. Let's include the region in all the measures that are applicable for the member states.
And it will be, by the way, von der Leyen said it in the group exchange, the group purchase of energy is going, the platform is going to be open to the Western Balkans.
We also said that with the the mechanisms to purchase vaccines for COVID, the region got them the last.
And Macedonia was one of the countries that actually trusted the European Union.
And those countries who relied on the EU were the last that started the immunization processes at home. So I think
we got vaccines from Serbia.
Let's prove that we are together. And we have a mild winter, luckily. The stockpiles are getting full. So I think the EU can afford to include the region and help with the energy crisis. And people will feel this. And people are more important than politicians.
Andreas Schiede?
I completely agree, especially the last sentence. I think politicians should not forget, it's not about themselves.
Yes.
It is about the life of the people. So it's also not about that anybody of us wants to, let's say, inaugurate or put up the Macedonian flag in front of the European Parliament. We would like to do, but it's more about the chances of the people, the access. As you asked the question, what to do against brain drain? There is an easy answer. Access for the people to the European...
No easy answer.
But there is an easy answer in the sense of access to the European sphere, like being part of the European Union. Then also the brain drain will change completely.
Well, actually, the politicians are the ones that set the conditions, that make the laws, and that make agreements. If they are brave, they make difficult agreements.
I think at the moment we have too many politicians which see problems, and we have too many politicians which make problems, instead of having politicians which simply say, let's do something, get things done, jump over our own shadow.
But Nikola Dimitrov was saying it's important to talk, but there's actually plenty of opportunities for the Western Balkans to talk. There's the European political community, which has been created exactly to provide a new forum. But even before that, there were numerous events and occasions here. Now there will be a summit on December the 16th in Tirana, first time not in Brussels. Von der Leyen is doing yet another Balkan tour. So it's not really the talk that is missing, no? It's the action, or you see it changing.
No, at the end, what counts is not speeches, it's about deeds. It's progress on the ground. It's again, what I said before, it's not about the politicians, it's about the people. And if something is, I think all the conferences are good if they help to change something.
Yeah. Marian Kraske, you following us? There's a lot of people going to the Balkans, and there's a lot of Balkan people coming here, and we're all very happy, but is this producing things in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like this expression of brain drain. We have much more in the meantime. It started as a brain drain, and in the meantime, it's a mass exodus. And I think this is really very serious. Unfortunately, we have to say that the international community, and in particular also the European Union, is part of the problem. I mean, the people are perceiving the European approach as part of the problem, and they lost hope, and they lost really the trust in the European path. Even though the numbers look, for example, for Bosnia and Herzegovina, still very good with these 83%. But what I really wanted to say is that, for example, this move of Mr. Schmidt, this is a symbol for the failure of the international community. What is really missing is that I totally agree with what was said before. We need a democratization process and no, deals or appeasement policies with the troublemakers in the region. And even though they are elected, right, what is completely missing is a strategy how to include and how to foster the democratic forces, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They are marginalized. There are a lot of projects financed by the European Union, but when it comes to the concrete political decision-making processes, they're marginalized and not included. We don't need just projects. We really need progress in the field and on the ground.
You've been very clear on the High Representative. I feel once again obliged to balance it a little bit. And
you can defend it.
The problem in Bosnia, a country that both of us know, is that a lot of politicians, he said it, the High Representative said that he would have preferred that they do the reform themselves. But the only thing that they seem to be able to do is to blame each other. And then when somebody uses the bond powers, then everybody attacks him because he's behaving colonial. So it's not...
Nah, I think it's a bit more complicated, right? Because talking about the European law, I was mentioned this before. We have 5 verdicts of the European Court for Human Rights, especially in the case of Sejdić Finci, one member of the Roma population and the former and long-term president of the Jewish Committee. And this verdict was formulated in 2009. So, and since then, the verdict is not implemented. So we have a de facto discrimination of Jews and of Roma people and of citizens in the country. So my question for the OHR is, why are we not working on these de facto discriminations? Why are we not working on the implementation of European law? And I think this is really the complete opposite of what is urgently needed to be done. And the thing is, the European law must be, I think, really the focus. International standards, implementation of these standards, and not going backwards to cementing ethno-nationalist structures.
Thanks. Less ethnical politics. Nicola Dimitrov, is it possible? Well, Macedonia had very deep ethnical, even violence, even had a war 20 years ago, but now the situation is, now the problem is more with Bulgaria, with Bulgarian feelings?
I mean, eventually we will also overcome this. And I think it comes down to being Macedonian or Albanian or Serb or Turk or Vlach or Roma in North Macedonia. We all want justice. We all want good health care and good schools for our children. We all want to live in a democracy where journalists will report and investigate, and politicians will be held accountable. So I think, to a large extent, although it's never a done deal in a multi-ethnic society to say, we did this, it's over, it takes a constant care and effort. But by and large, our problems are now of a different nature. And I think it's time to face these, let's say, bread and butter issues. The promise of Europe for the region was we all become more European in the good sense of the word. We move, we reform, borders matter less and less, and one day we are part of this family, and because this promise fades away and you cannot touch it, you cannot even see it now, we don't really know when it's going to happen, and I think people are right to be confused. This poll that you showed, within 5 years, 10, 15 years,
some say never. Yeah.
So this creates a situation where the ethnic agendas are back. Even the member state, you have in our situation a revisionist agenda by our neighbor, dreaming of the grandness of the old, the idea of land swap, the non-paper about ethnic boundaries these are all, I think we should overcome this. And I don't think people are leaving because we live with different ethnicities. People are losing hope in their countries because of the system fails to deliver basic services unless you phone someone. That you cannot get a job unless you have party support. These are the problems.
Somebody now is thinking to backtrack on the issue of visa liberalization because of migration and the Balkan corridor. This is particularly with people coming to Serbia, not to North Macedonia. But how do you see the migration issue having an impact in your region?
I think we have to be honest here. If there is an issue, then Belgrade should be asked to synchronize its visa policy. And you cannot use that argument to punish now Kosovar citizens who should have gotten visa liberalization years ago. Yeah. It's becoming an embarrassment.
Yeah.
And every year you have the European Parliament and the European Commission reiterating, yes, they're really good. They did what we asked them to do, and no action by the Council.
Thijs Ratten, you wanted to add something?
Well, no, but the Kosovo visa liberalization issue is dear to my heart because it involves also my country, the Netherlands. And I'm positive also on this topic, mildly positive, because there has been a totally unnecessary additional report now, which is even more positive than the already positive report in 2018. It was made upon request of France and the Netherlands. I hope that this will eventually make it possible for the Dutch government to overcome this, hopefully already by the end of this year. But I was, again, appalled by the news that I heard that now some countries, including France, but also they try to make a small coalition, are making another attempt to involve another criteria which the European Union itself didn't even fulfill yet when it comes to a system, ETIAS it's called, for checking the visa requirements. And that is exactly the opposite thing of what we should do. And I want to recall the words of Marion. We seem to reward the troublemakers instead of rewarding the people who do their job. Kosovo did its job on visa liberalization, so they should get what was promised. But instead, when it comes to Serbia, for example, clearly a troublemaker, I would say, they are backsliding on the rule of law, backsliding on democracy. But what is the reward? They open a new chapter. As late as last year. So that is the approach that is wrong, and I still want to link the big meaningful gesture that we could make as a European Union, like also reiterated by Nicola previously, combined with these real tangible results for the short term. Because linked to your statistic that you showed about the support for the European Union membership, I think for the citizens in all these countries, what really matters is, do we also see the difference in our daily life today and tomorrow? And yes, we need that perspective of being part of the family, but it also matters that we do concrete things today.
Thank you. We are now at the end of our hour, so I suggest to close with a final question to all of you. As I said, December the 6th is the EU Western Balkans Summit. It's going to take place in Tirana. One hope for something very concrete, very deliverable that you hope will happen by the end of the year, by that summit for the Western Balkans region. I would like to start with Marion Kraske, then Thijs Ruiten, then Nikola Dimitrov, and Andreas Schieder to conclude. So, Marion.
What is really missing, but we won't see it on the 6th of December, unfortunately, but what is missing is a strategic partnership with the citizens. And this is the key for everything. I think no appeasement anymore, no keeping the status quo, but really working on a democratic reform path. And this is also important on behalf of the European Union, really to rebuild credibility and to establish momentum.
Thank you, Marion Kraske. Thijs Ruiten.
Well, I give my points to Marion's idea, investing in democratic culture, and my own wish for 6th of December would be that we do have a full inclusion of the Western Balkan countries in the energy community, because that is what keeps people busy in Europe, in the European Union, but also in the Western Balkans.
Nikola Dimitrov.
It's good that on this, because European Council, I think in Zagreb, if I'm not mistaken, decided that every year there will be one EU Western Balkan summit. So it's good that we're keeping that promise. I think under the circumstances, the geopolitical situation, it's important to have one big delivery to the region. And maybe this can be on energy, maybe it can be on a more gradual approach to accession. Yeah. But I think we need one bold signal step that will tangibly tell the citizens of the Balkans, hey, they're becoming serious about us.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree what the pre-speakers were saying, and it's on the 6th of December also Nicola has his name day, probably, because it's St. Nicholas.
Yes.
I think also it is quite courage of the European Union to go to Tirana, because also we know that Albania's Prime Minister Edi Rama is quite outspoken, untypical, let's say, politician. So he will anyway also demand to have some concrete results on the thing. So I think there is some safeguard which makes us positive.
Yeah, we journalists, we do like outspoken people, but you were pretty good too, I must say.
You also weren't too bad as a moderator.
I'll do my best. Well, thank you very much for being guests. Thanks to the technical staff here at the European Parliament. Thank you, Marion Kraske. We're not forgetting you, even though you cannot be physically present with us. Thank you very, very much. And most important, thank you to all of you, to the audience of this discussion. As you can see, there is always plenty of things to say. There's plenty to discuss about the Western Balkans. And with that, see you next time.